a gun, taser, backup ammunition, handcuffs.
The tools of the trade for those who protect and serve. But now some police officers in Cleveland have a new crime-fighting tool in their arsenal.
The added resources are part of a unique partnership to keep kids in our city out of trouble. News 5's Mike Brookbank joining us now. Mike, this youth violence initiative believed to be the first of its kind in the entire country.
Yeah, Robin, Danita, it brings together 2 different police departments, a behavioral health facility, and Case Western Reserve University. All of them joining forces to help children and their families who call Cleveland's central neighborhood home.
The struggle to survive.
Toxic stress of living in poverty.
Taking a toll on young children, and for some, opening the door to a life of crime.
Gang-related, drug-related.
Confronting the issue each and every day, law enforcement.
We can't arrest ourselves out of youth violence.
Officers from CMHA Police, as well as Cleveland's 3rd District, now adding access to social service agencies to their duty belt.
They get into situations well before agencies do, and they see what's going on, and programs like this will give them the ability to help citizens at a very early stage of distress.
The first social responder outreach program will focus on children ages 9 to 14.
Crime in that age group has consistently been a problem.
Officers will hand out these cards that connect troubled youth and their families with much needed support.
What they didn't have in the tool belt was access to social services, access to help for you. And today they have that.
The intervention at an early age expected to help get these children back on the right path. A local behavioral health agency ready to help make that happen.
They will make that referral directly to Beachbrook, and then we will, within 24 hours, contact that family and offer the supports and services that they need.
That can be anything from counseling, basic parenting skills, or connecting the child with a mentor.
To do whatever is needed for the family so that this young person doesn't hit the prison pipeline.
Over the next 6 months, the program hopes to reach more than a dozen youth.
We have a reputation in the community as being an organization that can be trusted to come and help you.
So why Cleveland's central neighborhood? It is one of the poorest areas in the country and where both police agencies and Beachbrook overlap services. Case Western is going to collect data on the program's impact, and the goal is to expand it into other parts of the city.
Sounds all well and good here, but we all know there can be trust issues with police in certain communities.
Yeah, most definitely. The card that they get, actually, it says on here that the people that contact you can be trusted, and research from Case actually has shown that when the folks in those communities get those services, it actually improves the relationship with law enforcement.
Right. Thank you, Mike.
That's good.
Well, we got to tell you about another attack. It has been launched in the battle over abortion here in Ohio. Planned Parenthood is now suing over a new law that bans one of the most common abortion methods. The procedure known as D&E is commonly used in second trimester abortions. Planned Parenthood says it is the safest option for abortions after about 15 weeks of pregnancy and the only option in outpatient facilities. Similar laws have been rejected by federal courts. Families who lost their eggs and embryos in the fertility clinic failure at university hospitals now have until March of next year to decide what they want to do. A judge hearing the case just granted the extension, giving patients more time to figure out if they want to resume fertility treatments at the clinic, settle out of court, or file a lawsuit. 4,000 eggs and embryos were destroyed when a storage tank malfunctioned last year.
After a long delay, there are major developments tonight related to Cleveland Police's road to reform. This is now up to a federal judge to decide if police should adopt a plan that would change how officers do their jobs. 5 on Your Side investigator Sarah Buttison has covered problems within this department for years, and what we're talking about here is community policing.
Right, this is it, Rob, the new community policing plan. It requires patrol officers to spend at least 20% of their time addressing citizens' concerns. The Independent Monitor described the plan as, quote, much needed. Officers would spend time each shift doing things like foot patrols or attending community meetings. Their efforts would even be tracked through dispatch to make sure officers aren't only interacting with citizens when they call for help. A federal judge is also considering 2 additional reform plans, one to improve hiring and recruiting practices, the other to enhance district police committees. The plans are part of the consent decree Cleveland signed with the U.S. Department of Justice almost 4 years ago, after federal investigators found officers routinely engaged in a pattern and practice of excessive force. Cleveland has already adopted 2 other critical reform plans. Officers now receive training to handle calls involving mental health crises and on how and when they should use force. I'm 5 on Your Side investigator Sarah Buttison.
We now know what was taken when the FBI and BCI raided the Cuyahoga County Executive's office yesterday. The list includes folders and reports on the jail and a judge, computers, and an iPhone. The search warrant says that some of the things agents were looking for included files on plans for the county jail and investigations into deaths and assaults there. Cuyahoga County Executive Armand Budish is still defending himself after that raid.
He calls it wrong and unconscionable and says all investigators had to do was ask. Budish also insists this was all instigated by his political enemies, but with documents regarding the jail on top of the search warrant list and the former jail director now facing charges.
Do you suspect that any of this is in relationship, or any of this in relation to what has already happened and played out?
Again, you'd have to ask the prosecutors that. Now it's the Attorney General's office. I can't guess what's in their heads.
Budish telling Chief Investigator Ron Regan he has done nothing wrong.
All right, weather-wise, take a look over here. We've got a little bit of snow on the radar. I'm going to tell you if this is headed your way for the weekend coming up.
We had done all the hard work to get on the shelves, to make our brand present.
The trade war and tariff threats keeping Cleveland whiskey from sending their product abroad.
Plus, tax troubles for thousands of Ohioans. Why you're going to want to double-check the forms the state sent you.
And the calls we all dread. They're becoming more and more common. Just how often spam calls will ring your cell phone this year and what's being done to stop it.
We've hit the middle of the flu season and activity is low in Northeast Ohio's 2 largest counties. While flu activity in Cuyahoga County dropped last week, it did increase in Summit County. 2 people died of the flu, 1 in each county, the 6th flu-related death in Cuyahoga and the 3rd in Summit this season. International trade battles are now hurting local distilleries.
Bourbon made right here in Cleveland was breaking into markets overseas, but that was before a series of tariffs kicked off that trade war.
New tonight, News 5's Kevin Barry explains why Ohio's elected officials think it might get even worse.
At least some of the whiskey made here in downtown Cleveland was destined to have its passport stamped for sales overseas.
We had done all the hard work to get on the shelves, to make our brand present.
Then Cleveland Whiskey CEO Tom Licks's plans were disrupted by this announcement in March of last year.
We'll be imposing tariffs on steel imports and tariffs on aluminum imports.
President Trump's threat was followed by tariff threats from Europe on uniquely American products like Harley-Davidson and bourbon whiskey.
It made a whole lot of sense to say, okay, this is the retaliatory tariffs, and everybody at the time sort of thought, well, that would bring everybody to the table, and it didn't.
The tariffs didn't take effect until about 3 months later, but the damage was done. Just the threat of a whiskey tariff caused international business partners to cancel their orders from Cleveland Whiskey because it would be too expensive to get the product into Europe. The United States' 25% tariff on steel and 10% tariff on aluminum from Europe was countered with a 25% tariff on whiskey. Additional fees to get through the European ports drives the price up even more.
Which means your final price on the shelf might be 50% higher than normally it would be. That keeps us out of the market.
After the tariffs took effect, the Distilled Spirits Council says the whiskey industry saw a significant drop in exports to Europe. It's the first time the council says there's data showing how those tariffs are impacting the whiskey industry.
I think there we have to be careful.
Ohio Senator Rob Portman says President Trump has talked about expanding the steel tariffs to include car parts made overseas that come to the United States from Europe. Senator Portman says he worries that could reduce the number of American car industry jobs even before Europe retaliates again.
Our big 3 automakers, our American automakers, are all against it because it would actually increase their costs of production and make them less competitive in America.
As for Tom, he says years of work breaking into the European market is already likely down the drain.
Once those tariffs are resolved, we'll start from the beginning again. So all the hard work we did is pretty much wasted.
In Cleveland, I'm Kevin Barry, News 5.
And Tom says Cleveland Whiskey could try getting back into the European market by cutting their prices. He says any losses might be worth being on European shelves as long as the trade war doesn't last too long.
A warning tonight for anyone who claimed unclaimed funds in Ohio last year. The tax forms you were sent, they might be wrong. The Ohio Department of Commerce says 9,000 people were mailed 1099 forms with the wrong personal information or the wrong amount of interest they were paid. It's not clear if anybody's personal information is at risk. Some people will be offered a year of free identity theft protection just in case. Corrected forms should be sent out by the end of the week. Does the constant ringing of that cell phone make you seem way more popular than you really are? Then this won't surprise you. Half the calls to our cell phones this year will be spam. Wow. 90% of those spam calls will have familiar looking numbers on the caller ID. The FCC says this report is the first of many to come now as the agency works with the phone companies to stop these obnoxious calls.
You hear us banging on the desk, stop calling us. It's already happening. It's already happening. And they trick you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I know that area code. I know who that is.
They want you to answer. And see, sometimes they send you spam.
2 cans of it.
2 cans.
Yeah, we got two. Yeah, I got 2 cans.
Spam calls right here.
2 spam calls.
From Mrs. Fleischer, thank you very much for sending those spam gifts.
And you got some Triscuit, a box of Triscuit.
I think they came to both of us. We have to divide the Triscuit.
So we're going to put a little spam on the Triscuit and have a little treat.
It's dinner. Spam. It's what's for dinner. Let's show you what's going on. Tracking more cold this weekend. Snow to end your Sunday. How much? We will chat. Cleveland, we've got clouds with a little bit of clear mixing in. Do you notice that it's still twilight outside right now? Isn't that a great sign? It's after 6 p.m. and there's still twilight. Sunset time tonight, 6:01. Phenomenal. Cleveland's at 30. We've dropped 31 in Akron. Now we're down to 28 in Ashtabula and Worcester. Look at Mansfield, 26. 34 still Dover, New Philly. But the front that came through late last night into early this morning brought a few isolated sprinkles and rain showers. Nothing really to write home about. Not much to worry about for the morning rush either. Now, we had some sun for the afternoon, and we're getting clouds coming back in, so we'll call for a mainly cloudy overnight sky. Current temps, again, they're falling, 20s. Everybody falls into the 20s over the next 2 to 3 hours, and then you factor in still some breeze out there coming in out of the north. We got breezy conditions and wind chills, a lot of you in the teens. So if you're going out for a little extended Valentine's Day evening tonight,